All right. Is it working already, is it? Fantastic. Wait for all the options to come up. See how we go there. My computer's a bit slow, but it looks like we're live, so if you can hear me and see me, fantastic. A little comment there. Yeah, that's working. Very cool. So yeah, here we are, and today I wanted to talk about self-esteem. I've got no notes, no plan, no nothing. I just wanted to see what would happen if we had a chat about it. And it's a common term, that self-esteem term. We'll talk a bit about that today probably, and how it's slightly different to the term confidence. I think of self-esteem as really the word self is the important thing. It's the amount of worth you give to yourself, to who you are. And often this is in comparison to other people, but sometimes it's a personal thing you do on your own. Confidence is more like trusting in your capabilities to handle situations, looking forward to things, knowing that you're going to do well, that kind of thing. Self-esteem is more really about a value that you place on yourself. I think one way to look at it is the higher self-esteem is when you don't want to swap places with anybody else in the world. So you have high self-esteem if being you is the best thing you can think of being. You wouldn't trade it if there was any options. If you can think of people who you would trade with, if you can think of people who you would rather be than you, then you may have self-esteem issues. And that would make you a normal human being. I'm not sure if I know anyone who doesn't have them. I do know some incredibly confident people, that's for sure. And I definitely know some people who, like myself, wouldn't trade places with anyone else in the world, not for all the money or success or fame or anything. They like being themselves so much. They want to kind of see it through, through the hard times and the good times. It's not just about having a good life. They're willing to stick with being who they are, all on their own. But I'm here to answer questions today. I have a long history with confidence building and with dealing with my own self-esteem issues when I was younger. The younger version of me absolutely wanted to be somebody else and wanted to switch places with basically anyone I came into contact with who was either doing better than me by my standards or seemed to enjoy life more than I did. Anybody who seemed a bit happier than me, I would have swapped them out. No problem. I remember in my teenage years actually fantasizing about trading lives with people. Let's start by having a look at what low self-esteem actually is. And it's important to understand it's a set of beliefs, a subjective set of beliefs. We so often think whatever we believe about ourselves is some sort of objective fact. And while what we believe about ourselves might be based on facts, so like may be based on events that really happened or things we really did or strengths and weaknesses we genuinely have, the belief itself that these are meaningful, that these facts come to a conclusion about how valuable you are as a person, that's the subjective bit. So for example, I might say, let's say I have no friends. That might be a fact. I might have no people I call friends. But the conclusion that makes me a lesser person than other people, that's subjective. I've made a little leap there to come to that conclusion. And the reason I say that is because you can also be somebody who has lots of friends, but the way you made those friends or those friendships are very fake, and in which case you're really no better off than the person with no friends. So self-esteem is it's this conclusion you come to yourself based on pieces of information, often quite cherry-picked pieces of information, very specific things that you pulled out of the stream of your life while ignoring all the rest of the stuff. And then you decided these are the facts that I'm going to make an assessment about myself on. That's what happens in your more rational moments, of course. In other moments, it's just a feeling. People quite often identify with their feelings. So if they're feeling down, they think I'm a bad person. They make that conclusion. You can see that with depression. What's really interesting is I can still experience depression these days. It happens a few times a year. But there's no self-worth attached to it anymore. I can just be a guy who's having depression and I wait for it to go and then I carry on with my life. Whereas I noticed when I was younger, me having depression meant I was a fucking loser and I suck and nobody likes me. It had all this extra stuff about who I am on it. So, yeah, I think it's incredibly interesting how self-esteem, mood go together, and how self-esteem and beliefs go together. The main thing I'm trying to get to here is that your low self-esteem, it's not a fact, it's a perspective. Think of it, it's a very specific perspective. In fact, anyone can have this perspective. So if you think of the person that you either admire or envy the most, think of someone you look up to who you think has the life that you're missing out on, for example. Person that you think is just awesome and killing it. If I can implant the right perspective into them, they will have low self-esteem. And so it's important to talk about that perspective because no matter what's happening in your life, the perspective will give you low self-esteem. The perspective is based on beliefs. So I'll give you an example. Actually, somebody emailed me today with a great example of this. They were at a dance class and they saw a guy who has quite deformed arms, the short, very short arms. It's like basically just hands. And to me, it sounded like one of those thalidomide babies, one of those people who their parents, the mother took thalidomide and they ended up with birth defects. And he said he saw this person at his dance class and it made him feel grateful for his own life. He says, basically, at least I'm not like that. At least I'm not deformed like that. And what he also says, this guy was going around asking girls to dance and just kind of having a good time. And I said, isn't it interesting how this guy assumes, when he looks at the guy with the deformed arms, that guy, that deformed guy, would want a better life? He assumes that. He assumes that he would want to swap places with the guy who's watching him. And I think, well, that only will happen if he has a low self-esteem perspective. If he only looks at what he can't achieve because of his arms, for example, then he will definitely want to swap places with other people. And people who have a low self-esteem perspective would look at him and think nobody would want to be him because he has this obvious deformity and he must therefore suffer. The deformity is the fact, but it's the perspective that makes the difference. If that guy's like, fuck it, I'm going to live my life however I can, I'm going to play the hand that I've been dealt. Yes, I've got this deformity, but no, it doesn't stop me living. In fact, it makes everything a little bit more of a challenge so I get more out of it. If he was to have that perspective, he'll have high self-esteem and his arms never need to change. He can always have the deformity of his arms. The arms do not reduce his self-confidence. If you can come to this realization that anything painful about being you, anything that anything that affects your self-esteem negatively, if you can understand that it's not about the facts of your life, but it's how you see them and the conclusions you draw when you look at them, then you'll realize you've got complete power over this thing. Right? It's if a very basic one is the optimism versus pessimism. So let's say it's raining outside. I can either say, ah, shit, my picnic plans are ruined. How unlucky. This is so unfair. Or I can say, well, I'm stuck inside now, so I guess it's a chance for me to finish my book. Now, the rain is the fact. No matter what I think, there's always going to be the rain. That's like the raw data of life. That's real. But whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing totally depends on my perspective. And the same applies to you. Let's say you've got what you think of as a really legitimate excuse for low self-esteem. Let's say you've been bullied all your life. Let's say you've got that story. And you say, I have low self-esteem because I was bullied all my life. So you've drawn a conclusion that how you feel about yourself is based on the bullying. And yet it would only take you a tiny amount of research to find somebody who was bullied to an equal level or worse than yourself, who has high self-confidence. Now, what would be the difference? Well, one person looks at the bullying and goes, I'm a loser, I'm a victim, I don't fit in, I'm ostracized, nobody loves me, it's unfair, I've been targeted for punishment. They've got that perspective on the bullying. Whereas another person would look at it and being like, that was training. That was endurance that built me up to be psychologically resilient, that taught me how to battle against the evils of the world and survive them. It showed me the power of being myself in the face of adversity. Completely different story about the same bullying. Right? Now, it's kind of a chicken and an egg situation. I don't know which comes first, low self-esteem and some sort of chemical imbalance in the brain, or the story, the perspective you take on the facts. I think it's almost circular. The story creates low self-esteem, which creates the story, round and round you go. You find somebody who's in a victim mindset, everything in their life has a disaster story attached to it. They're stuck in the traffic like everyone else, but for them, the traffic's this big deal. They don't see it as fair, even though everybody else is also experiencing it. I brought it up on a call. I did a webinar for Brojo yesterday, I think it was, on comparing yourself to other people. And you'll notice with a victim perspective, with a low self-esteem perspective, you'll only look for people that you think are doing better than you to compare to. While subconsciously you also compare yourself to people who are doing worse than you, but that doesn't seem to affect you as much. So you could be at the office and you could make more money than 8 people there, but it's the 2 people who make more money than you that you'll be focused on. The fact that you've got the internet and you're listening to me talk right now means that you have better access to technology than like 50% of the planet. Probably I could go on to assume that you have access to clean drinking water, that you have a roof over your head tonight, that you're not food insecure, you know where your next meal is coming from. If any of these things are true, this puts you in like the top 15, 20% in terms of resources on the entire planet. Most other people on the planet have a harder time surviving than you do. But you don't compare yourself to them, do you? Right? You're just looking, you're at number 15, you're at 15%, you're looking at people at 14% and above and going, they're better than me. Whereas confident people, it's not that they look down exactly, but they see the whole scope. They see, yes, it sucks that my new shoes got ruined in the rain, but also I'm lucky to have shoes in the first place. I can see both of those things. When I have high self-esteem, I see all the facts. I don't just cherry pick the facts that back up my low self-esteem story. I look at the whole lot. I think one of the main points I'm trying to get across here, your self-esteem issues are completely under your control. You actually have to put effort into maintaining them. For you to have low self-esteem, you actually have to carefully maintain a perspective of victimhood. And I say this with love because I did this for most of my life, but I have no pity for you. How can I pity somebody who's doing it to themselves? I have no doubt that bad things have happened to you. Things that even objectively bad things, you know, things that everybody would say is bad. I'm sure those things have happened to you, but who haven't they happened to? Maybe something horrible happened to you. Maybe you're sexually abused. No, that has not happened to everyone. But horrible things have happened to everyone. So you have to ask yourself, if everybody suffers, why do I get like the special identity of being the loser? You know, if someone even, I always look at someone like Robin Williams as a great example. You know, Robin Williams, top of the comedy ladder, top of the acting ladder, super loved, super rich, still committed suicide. So if people at that level, with that much fame and success, still suffer, then why are you special in your suffering? Why do you bathe in it and somewhat glory in it? You know, I remember distinctly from my low self-esteem days that I would think of myself as kind of special for the punishment I received. It wasn't special in a positive way, but like I felt like life was unfair on me. Like everyone else had it a little bit easier. Like it was a bit clearer for everybody else. It wasn't as confusing. They didn't have to work as hard. You know, they had better luck. That was a story I told myself. It's really a story saying I'm special. My suffering is more than others. And it was that story, that perspective, that actually kept the low self-esteem going. Because I know I just looked for evidence that proved that story true. You know, I'd ask a girl out, she'd say no, and I'd be like, see, I get punished, even though every guy in the world has had a girl say no, right? I would just look for evidence that things were against me and ignore the evidence that those same things would be against other people. And I'd also ignore all the strengths in my life. An example I gave on the webinar the other day is I'm quite an accomplished reader. I've always been quite academic, and I find reading both easy and pleasurable. I was good at spelling when I was younger. I got an A+ in English throughout high school. But I've never been proud of that. I've never considered that to be any particular quality of mine. I just can read. It's like I'm not proud of walking or eating. It's just a thing I can do. And yet I had a friend, he was dyslexic, and he struggled throughout school. He was always, put in the dumb kid class and, always kicked out of class by teachers for being fidgety and so on. And he was actually jealous of my ability to read. So he was jealous of something I had that I didn't even value. Yeah. And I would ignore evidence like that in order to maintain my low self-confidence. I'd always constantly come up with a reason why my life's worse. And I talk to people who have this all day long. That's my job. Not all my job, but I talk with a lot of low self-esteem people. And no matter what, when somebody's stuck in that perspective, no matter what opportunities I present to them, what options I show them are available, they just constantly come back with why they can't, and why it's too hard, and why it's unfair, and what's in the way. And sometimes they have to work quite hard at it. Like I know some people, they'll be in like a terrible situation and they could literally just leave the situation. But they'll have all these reasons why they can't leave. And none of those reasons are valid. I'm like, they're barriers. They're difficulties when it comes to leaving, but you can physically move your legs and leave. Like you walk away. But they just keep coming back, and they have to actually like put some thought into why they can't do it. They have to really fight against the advice. And all I can come to the conclusion is that they're trying their very hardest to maintain low self-esteem. And I get it because I used to do the same thing. What was even worse is how I'd sabotage myself subconsciously. One of my biggest areas of pain in my life was romantic relationships. And I used to do this thing where I'd put myself in the friend zone with girls. And I've really got to emphasize I'd put myself there. So on one hand, I'd be complaining to everybody how girls never want to date me and never want to be my girlfriend, never want to sleep with me, and all the other guys are having those stuff, and I'm not. On the other hand, when I was attracted to a girl, I wouldn't tell her directly. I'd like pretend to be her friend and not be honest about my feelings for her. And by the time I was, of course, it'd be far too late. That window of opportunity had closed. So I'd actually do something where I'm setting myself up to experience the same pain over and over again because I'm too scared of rejection, too scared of taking a risk, whatever it is. But I wouldn't see that. I'd be like, I'm hanging out with girls all the time and none of them like me. And that would be my perspective on it. Now, it was true. That was the facts again. I was hanging out with girls all the time. None of them wanted me romantically. But if I widen my perspective, I could see, well, actually, those people who are having relationships and stuff, at some point they actually asked the person out, or they said, I like you, or they took a risk. I wasn't doing that. So how can I say this is a problem with me? Now, there are some people who will feel that they're trying their best and just fail, 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 fail. And I get that. But what I've found is when you dig in deeper, it's not quite what it appears to be. For a start, people often don't learn. They assume that there's no point in changing the way they do things because it will never get better. So they'll just repeat a useless strategy, you know. So somebody will be like pretending to be cool in their online dating profile, and they'll keep doing that for years, and then they'll say online dating doesn't work for me. It's like, well, have you tried not pretending to be cool, ever? Or somebody will be dishonest their whole life, like somebody will be a people pleaser, always fake about their emotions, always holding back on confrontations, always running away from confrontation, always just keeping everything in and making people thinking they're nice and lovely and friendly when they're feeling other things. And then they complain that people aren't connected deeply to them or that their career's not going well. And they've been applying a shitty strategy that never worked for many, many years, not trying to change it even a little bit, just trying to do more of it and more of it, and then complaining that nothing works for them. It's amazing how many people I've worked with who will say they have low self-esteem, and then they'll say something like, I've tried everything. I'm like, everything? Because I'm telling you, whatever you're talking about, trying everything would take you like 1,000 lifetimes. So what do you mean by everything? What they usually mean by everything is they've tried maybe 2 things and neither worked on the first go, so they gave up. It's amazing how many guys will say like, oh man, every time I've asked a girl out, she said no, to make it sound like that's happened a lot. I'll say, well, how many times have you asked a girl out? And they'll be like, well, actually, directly, never, but, in high school, I once sent this text to a girl to see if she wanted to hang out. And, they haven't actually done anything, And I say that with love because this is me that I'm describing, at least my past self. But what I'm yet to see, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but what I'm yet to see is somebody who boldly and courageously lives by their core values, takes risks, constantly willing to learn, gets out of their comfort zone regularly, and does that for many years consistently. I've never seen someone like that have low self-esteem. Okay. And of course, vice versa, I've never seen someone with low self-esteem who does that. What I have seen, almost without variation, is everybody who comes to me and says something along the lines of they're struggling with their self-esteem. If I look at their life, I will see a huge amount of dishonesty. They're fake with people nearly all the time. They're so fake with them so often that they've actually lost track of what real is. I'll see a lot of cowardice, a lot of running away from things that are scary and uncomfortable instead of running into them. And I'll see this consistent victim perspective, always looking for what's wrong, what's too hard, and what's impossible, and always in denial of their strengths and successes and opportunities. What I haven't seen is somebody with what I'd call legitimate low self-esteem, somebody who can explain what they've done with their life, and I'm actually like, wow, I can't understand how you don't have high self-esteem. I've never had that. After studying confidence for over a decade, I've never had someone present to me what they're doing and their backstory and had me go like, wow, I can't understand how you have low self-esteem. I can't understand how you can't build confidence. I've never seen someone who's doing everything they could be doing. And what I have seen is every excuse you can throw at me as to why your low self-esteem is justified. Abused as a child, bullied, neglected. I've dealt with people who have had horrific sexual abuse and stuff throughout their entire life. I've met people who have come from, they're refugees from war zones. They've seen war crimes being committed. They've seen their parents murdered in front of their eyes. I've worked with people who have been brought up in gangs. They were using drugs before the age of 10. They were committing violent crimes before they went to high school. I met all of those kinds of people, and I really doubt you have a story that could shock me and make me go, oh my God, yeah, I can't see how anyone could have high self-esteem after that life. I'm not trying to demean your experience. What I'm trying to say is for every story you can provide me, I can find you an example of someone who has the same story or worse, but they live in a different way to you and they have a different perspective to you, and that's why they have high self-confidence. And that was the big lesson for me, and that's why I've been I guess a little bit harsh in this. Plus no one showed up to talk to, so I'm just talking to myself. But when I looked at my own life, I realized before I can complain that I don't have high self-confidence, before I can complain that life's too hard, I have to first correct my behavior. I have to stop pussying out of things that are scary and just go and do them, even though it's scary. I have to be honest with people instead of people-pleasing and fakery. I have to respect myself more and set boundaries and hold other people to account for the way they treat me. I need to be more compassionate with myself, take better care of my body and my mind, my overall health. And I need to stop hanging around with people who are toxic for me and only spend my time with people who I spontaneously love because they're healthy connections. Once I've done all that, then I can complain about low self-esteem. And that was a conclusion I came to. I'm like, okay, before I decide that my life sucks and that it's harder to be me than it is to be others and so on, first I'll do all the things I know I haven't been doing. Let's at least get there. I'll go ask for the promotion instead of being too scared of my boss. I'll go tell girls I'm attracted to them instead of pretending to be their friends. I'll start going to the gym and eating healthy instead of binging on snacks in front of the television. I'll get my shit sorted, and then, if life still sucks and I still have low self-esteem, it's justified. But what do you think happened? I went and did all that stuff and my confidence shot through the roof. It's not rocket science to build confidence. It's really not complicated. Be more curious, be more honest, be more respectful of yourself. These things are not complicated or mysterious. Be more curious means you're probably wrong about everything, so go and find out the truth instead of believing your own beliefs, believing your own thoughts, believing your own feelings. Being more honest means what's going on inside you comes out of your mouth, what you want to do comes out in your behavior. Okay? Being more respectful means holding that space, making sure you make the space for yourself in the world. You do not let people cross your boundaries. You do not disrespect yourself by letting other people disrespect you. It doesn't mean you have to go out and fight everybody. It just means you say, stop doing that. And even if they don't stop, at least you said it. It means you say no when you can't handle more work. If you're doing all of those things consistently every day, you're constantly trying to upgrade how much integrity you have, and you've been doing that for a while, and you've still got low self-confidence, then let me know, because you're going to be the first person. Okay? And I also want to point out, I'm not blaming anybody for the way they are. I'm a believer in determinism. I don't believe in free will. I believe if you have low self-esteem right now, it's because everything that's ever happened to you, your genetics, your upbringing and influences, the environmental factors in your life, all combined to give you low self-confidence. You didn't choose it. It happened to you. But that doesn't let you off the hook. If you're aware of that now, then you have to choose to keep doing it. Okay? If you come to the awareness, yes, I have low self-esteem, and I'm not behaving according to my values, and I dwell on the victim rather than being responsible, then you're now aware that you choose to do this. If you weren't aware before, you are now. Which means it will continue as long as you choose it to. Now, it doesn't mean if you go out and spend a day being honest that you'll suddenly turn your confidence around, but it can do, you know? I remember the first time I directly told a girl I was attracted to her, something shifted in me permanently. Something, I just realized, holy shit, like, I have this power in me to be honest. It's always been there. It's terrifying, and I have to, like, engage in some courage. I have to feel my heart racing and all these sickening fear feelings and then go do it. But I can do it. Alrighty, I'm going to sign off now. Honestly, I was hoping some people would show up and we could have a chat, but it was not to be. Either I chose the wrong time or just wasn't a topic people wanted to talk through. Either way, the recording will be available and you can get in touch with me anytime, dan@brojo.co.nz. If you want to share your story, ask further questions, challenge what I've said, anything, go for it. And of course, if you felt that this was good and helpful and you think others should listen to it, please share it around. The more it's shared around, the more people we can help. And just ask yourself, if I was responsible instead of being a victim, what difference would it make? What changes would occur? Thank you for watching up to this point, and I'll see you guys next time.